Hey everyone, welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers, seekers of happiness and joy, seekers of a centered approach to success in life, seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Hey, JJ, did you get that LinkedIn video that I sent you, the Simon Sinek one?
Oh, yeah. Sure did. I love Simon Sinek.
I know.
He's everything awesome. He says is so thought-provoking.
I know. So I sent you a quick link. It was like a 2-minute blip on 4 generations in the workforce.
Yep.
And I just wanted to get your thoughts.
Well, I think it's really interesting. I love talking about generational differences.
Me too.
Not to just in a comparing way, although that's like a fun party trick.
Yeah.
But really like how
used to be.
Look, what's that? It used to be.
Yeah.
Is it becoming not because you're edging towards the edge of that scale? Is that what you're saying? I'm confused at what you're implying.
Oh, that was a hit. Oh, it's a hit. No, I mean, people are getting so amped up about the conversation. I mean, everybody's been talking about younger generations, for a really long time, right?
Forever.
I know.
For the history of humanity.
It's getting way more amped up, though. People are getting grumpy, like straight up grumpy. That Simon Sinek video I posted on my LinkedIn, and then just out of curiosity, I went back and looked at it last night to see. I went on his page and looked the same video. Oh my goodness gracious! There were straight out fights.
Oh yeah, there was like way more comments. So we need to take note. Like post something super inflammatory, and then you get engagement.
Perfect.
Okay, so specifically, he was talking about the youngest generation that's currently in the workforce.
Yes, called Generation Z.
Generation Z, and sort of some of their needs or some of the ways they engage in work. But let's start just by like giving a quick overview of the generational boundaries and the tags of them, because well, you and I kind of nerd out about it a lot. Maybe not everyone knows about it. So so the kind of like the 4 main generations that are currently in the workforce are...
There are 4 generations in the workforce right now, which is worth saying.
Actually, there is actually a bit of an argument that there's 5, because there's some of the oldest generation, like that are in their later 70s, that are like literally still hanging on.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I know a number of them.
2% of them, in fact.
Well,
2% of the workforce is that.
Somebody was visiting with the Google.
But let's just focus on the core. Okay. So it kind of starts the baby boomers, right?
Yep, right.
So the baby boomers are like born 1946 to 1964. Okay. One of the things that I think is really interesting about generational these sort of I don't know, archetypes, or I don't want to call them stereotypes, but they kind of are.
Archetypes
is that they're usually shaped by a significant event. So when you see these generational behavior changes, they're not just because, 40 years has 40 years has elapsed and now we're just going to name the next chunk of people something else.
Right.
It's usually shaped by significant events in that group of people's lives.
Okay. Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So the baby boomers, who are now
that'd be mid-70s.
I don't do public math on that, but
it'd be mid-70s,
and even on the younger side, they're probably in 60.
Right. Sorry, the oldest would be like a mid-70s, right, to mid-60s.
Yep. But they were shaped by like the Vietnam War, civil rights movement, like Watergate, which was like political corruption, right?
Right.
So those are the things that have shaped their thinking. And what I always like sometimes I give baby boomers a little bit of hard time for being like a little bit too like stodgy, money hungry, materialistic, just trying to climb the corporate ladder.
Yeah.
But the ironic thing about a huge chunk of them is they're like straight up hippies that were like fighting the Vietnam, like anti-war. They're having peace protests. They're having like love-ins in Yosemite. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's funny how like a little bit of my generation, which is like the next one, kind of like gives them a hard time, even though they're probably
you aspire to all of that.
They're not. Yeah, exactly. But okay, so that's what shaped them. So then next is Gen X.
Yep.
Which is what we are, like born in between 65 and 80, 1980. So it's kind of this like in the middle. And the interesting thing with the Gen X population is that there's fewer of Gen Xers than boomers and the generation that's next, which is the millennials.
Seriously?
Right, because
okay, that's weird.
Yeah, it's a big it's like a significant percentage population dip for Gen Xers. And the reason is because there's a lot of boomers because the generation before them came back from like World War II.
Right.
Had a whole bunch of kids. We'll go into how that works in the next pod. And then those are the boomer kids. That's why it's called the baby boomers. Because there's a big population boom.
There's a big boom.
The kids of the boomers are actually the millennials.
Oh.
And that's why in the middle, because the kids of the Gen Xers are actually, it's like interlaced. It's going kind of ping ponged.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the thing that shaped the Gen Xers are like the AIDS pandemic, the fall of the Berlin Wall,
right?
Like the .com boom, which was like we didn't really have this tech stuff, and then boom, it all comes, and then it all comes like crashing down in fantastic effect, and that kind of shapes how we think.
Do you think all of that came crashing down because everyone stopped what they were doing and really focused on 80s music?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
In any technological way they possibly could?
Yeah. Like this Apple IIe and Aquanet is awesome.
I cannot believe that wasn't at the top of your list. I just had to make sure that was in there somewhere. 80s music.
Yeah. Well, so the interesting thing about the Gen Xers is just because of the time period, like it kind of causes like I exhibit this like a crazy amount, like very skeptical, pretty much everything.
I think that's your personality.
Nope. I can blame it on the archetype. But independent, informal, kind of flexible. Those are just the words that people use to describe the Gen Xers.
Really? So, okay. That's interesting.
That's so then the millennials, right? Yeah. So when I was kind of, I don't know, in my early career, the big thing was, how are we dealing with these millennials, right?
Oh, yeah, I know.
All these kids are coming in, right?
Yeah,
all the stodgy old people are
crazy
like,
kids.
I'm like, dude, the millennials are great. What are you talking about? But they were born 81 to 2000.
Okay.
So, and they were shaped by things like Columbine, right? They kind of had to deal with this new sort of
reality.
Uprising or reality of how kind of violence can at a very small local level, right? Like the baby boomers maybe needed to deal with something like Vietnam
War,
but that was happening way far away. Even though it was still horrible, it wasn't as close to home. But the millennials have to deal with violence that are at their school, right? So that really and 9/11 right?
Yeah,
Threats
yeah.
at home, which I think
Right.
is a very different, has a very different effect on people, right? And of course,
Right, right,
internet
right,
all
right.
the time.
Yes, which
Like
should be at the
they
top of
didn't,
the list, kind of like 80s music.
yeah,
Right.
they didn't know the world without the internet. So
Yeah.
you and I can remember the world without the internet. They cannot.
Right. Right.
So, but the interesting thing about the millennials is like, they're really like kind of civic and open minded.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They are like achievement oriented still,
Yep.
which is like, pretty motivating. I don't know if you remember this. The thing that we'd always give, a hard time to millennials about is
Yeah.
that they never move out of their parents' basement.
Yes.
Poor millennials.
Poor millennials.
But
What
I
they
work
ever
with
do
a
to
ton of
us?
millennials, and I can
They
tell
are
you they are
rock
freaking
stars.
awesome.
I know.
And then the youngest generation, okay, born 2001 to 2020.
Okay.
So, right, so your kids are millennials.
Yes,
Right.
our kids are millennials. Yeah.
My kids are Gen Zers,
Ah.
right? Because they were born, my oldest was born in 2005.
Okay.
So they're not in the workforce. Well, actually, they are kind of in the workforce. They
Yeah,
have
part-time.
They have
Yeah.
their part-time first
Yeah, they're
jobs,
sandwich
right?
kings at Subway.
Yeah, exactly.
And, right. Yes. They're starting.
Oh, Elliot, I didn't tell you this. Elliot got a job at the movie theater.
Ooh. Oh my
Right?
gosh. What
What
a fun
I know, right?
job. Oh, that'd be such an. Think about that.
It's like the best teenager job. Just
Yeah, you
like
can skulk
unlimited
around
movies
in
and
the dark.
popcorn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Skulk around in the dark.
with snacks. What could possibly be better?
So this younger generation,
Mm-hmm.
the things that have shaped their life
Right.
so far, they're
Yeah.
like kind of at best, they're probably what was I make it like in their early 20s,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
At the oldest.
At the oldest.
So they kind of have to deal with life after the 9/11 stuff, right? They kind of
Yep.
that kind of stuff's like the more like reality than an event. They have had to go through the Great Recession, which was in the mid 2000s,
Yeah.
right? Was that 7, 8,
Yeah.
9, something like that?
It's 2008.
Yep. So they had to experience a fairly significant economic slowdown. Even the millennials really didn't, right?
Right. Right.
And not only have they had the internet their entire life, they have probably had a smartphone
Yeah.
since they were a
A personal
toddler.
device. A
They've
personal
had-
electronic
yeah,
device.
They've had the entire intelligence of the human race
Yeah.
in their hand since
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
since they were
Since
in
they
the
were born.
crib.
Yeah. I mean, stuffed in their face for a babysitter and all sorts of things.
Yep.
You're right. Yeah. It's true.
Yep. So that's pretty interesting how we've said a bunch of times now, like technology can really shape generations.
Yeah.
So
Well, and it's interesting when you think about what you've just described is how each one of these generations has grown up, because then you toss them all together in a setting in which they all must coexist, not as family members, but as coworkers
yeah.
or colleagues.
Yep.
And the dynamic is really, really different.
Yeah, and there's this like from a work perspective, I see a lot of differences. Our older baby boomer teammates are kind of like, yeah, it's a 9 to 5.
Yeah, yeah.
They're fairly.
I've done
like,
my dues. I don't need to. I can come when I want, but I will
Well-
be here to check. I mean, they do have that.
Yeah, and they do have like but the other thing that they have, this is I've noticed this is super key, is the baby boomers will act like that for them, but what they'll expect out of the
Totally.
younger generation
Oh,
is
100% different.
you come in, you
Yeah.
work,
You do what I did.
you pay your dues. I've heard
'cause
that
that's
a
what I
couple of
did.
times.
Same
No,
here.
you can't just jump up like 3 levels in your career. You got to grind it out and pay your dues.
Right.
And,
Right.
and like the
Exactly.
younger generation is like,
What?
dude, I'm like a way smart computer programmer. I'm not gonna sit here and grind it out. I'm just gonna skip up to the top.
Yeah, yeah. There's a huge disparaging difference in thought that
Yep.
way, without question.
Yep. And the baby boomers are totally okay with like sacrificing. That's kind of part of their DNA. I feel like it's like, no, if
Yeah.
I want to get ahead, I will sacrifice the things that outside
Yeah.
of work I might find important, but that's how you get ahead.
Right. Like it used to be like, oh, if you want to come and work for our firm and you want to end up here, well, you have to first be shipped off to some other state for 2 years
Yeah.
and do all these things and prove
Yeah.
that you are valued enough for us. And then you can come back and have that job after
Yep.
you've done that. So it's all about the paying your dues and climbing the corporate ladder. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, for sure.
But I mean, it's not bad. I mean, there's some
No.
values there, but like
Actually,
that's
at this-
turns into a little bit of a culture clash.
Well, that's a really good phrase. You know what I was going to say about this whole thing is what I feel sad about, legitimately sad about, is that we have lost our capacity to fully look at things that aren't our opinion or our reality. It seems that we've lost our way in being able to look at something different, hear something different, and observe it rather than judge it. And it's really sad because, and I just think this is the case in so many topics right now. And we've talked about that, politics, you talk about religion, you talk about sexual orientation, you talk about anything. And there's such divide. And it's just, I feel sad about that in the
Yeah,
same
you're gonna
thing
get
as
me
I do
all
with
riled
these
up here.
generations.
You're gonna get me all riled up. Okay, you know why?
Why?
You know why this happens at work? You know why that exact thing happens at work? Mm-hmm. Is because people don't feel safe.
Yes.
It's a safety
Yes.
issue. And so like the thing that I work so hard on all the time is, and we've got some baby boomers. Like, I mean, I'm Steve, right? Steve's
Yeah, right.
Steve is
Yep.
my
Yep.
example boomer.
Yeah.
I don't think he listens to the pod. I'll let him know he was on.
Because he's a boomer.
But he does, to his credit, he will say things that are sort of boomer-like. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I call him on it, even the littlest bit, he's like, oh, nope, you're right. We have to
Wow.
be more open about that. We have to be more flexible about that.
Wow. Yeah.
But it's because I have spent so much time saying,
Yeah.
hey, Steve, this other way, it's okay. No one's getting fired. We're going to try it. If it doesn't work, we'll do something else.
Right.
But there are so many work environments where it doesn't feel safe to advocate for a different way.
Right.
Or
Yes, exactly.
really changing anything, or
even
being more
quietly stating that you're not in agreement with how something is. That is like huge flame now. It's a
Right.
huge gas can in flame now,
So
and
to
it's
me,
so sad.
it's the only way we can move forward with those kinds of conversations and being more accepting of lots of different work styles.
Right.
Is to make sure we're providing, like, us as employers, as businesses, as business owners and C-level executives running these organizations, that we're really focusing on like emotional safety.
Right.
Right? I'm
Right,
not,
and
I'm
boy,
not
oh
talking
boy.
about physical safety. I'm talking about like emotional
Yep.
safety. And emotional
Yes.
safety is like, if I share my opinion, I'm not going to get fired.
Right.
If I want to try something new, I'm not going to get fired. I mean,
not
it
gonna
really
get
is a
taken
lot
to
of
task.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get yelled at by my manager. I'm not going to get punished, demoted, whatever. Like
Shamed.
that whole host
Shamed.
of things. Yeah. So
Yeah. And like even with the Simon Sinek video, the comments were they took after Simon. It was unreal. I've never seen that before. They were like, "How could you say these things?" And literally in his talk, he was simply describing what is without any judgment whatsoever.
we skipped over what the video was about because I went on this giant rant about what the generations are. So
do you wanna do
Simon
that?
specifically was talking about the youngest generation, Generation Z, and how they show up at work.
Yeah.
And some of the interesting things that he was calling out about this younger generation is that they're not very good at dealing with stress. And he's saying, hey, this isn't like a critique or dig.
No, he wasn't judging.
He's like, this is just kind of an is
judgment.
thing. This is like an observational thing.
Yeah.
They struggle with dealing with stress.
Yeah.
They're really like avoid conflict or confrontation to like an extreme, like to an extreme.
Yeah. Like he used the example that if somebody was feeling uncared for at work, that they would rather quit their job and find a new one than go and say, I don't feel good here. Like,
or he even said, like, even if they feel underpaid, they won't even go ask for a raise. They'd rather just quit and try to find a new job when the employer would happily just give them a raise if they asked for it.
Right. By the way, you gave that overview of what the video is about, but you didn't say one thing that I think needs to be added. You said he was sort of observing this younger generation in the workforce, but I would also say that he was doing it from the premise of we must give them space.
Yeah, so we'll dive into that. Let's dive into that in a second, because I want to hear what your definition of that is.
Yeah.
The other thing that he kind of observed was what he called emotional unprofessionalism.
Yeah. Right.
Which it's like, to me, it's like they're
so
wearing...
perfect. I love that phrase.
Right?
Yes.
And it's like, they just wear their emotions on their sleeve. They like come into work.
Yeah,
whatever. They had a bad, super grumpy, slouch in the chair. Like whereas previous generations would just like suck it up.
Pretend
it's not happening. And now I'm not saying that's good or bad, because like, I mean, you and I are big advocates of, making sure you're like in touch with your emotions and you're expressing them, but there is a limit, right? So
you're not leaking your emotions like, all over everyone.
Maybe there's an appropriate place to do it and an inappropriate place.
Yes.
Like, just like you wouldn't show up to the meeting without pants on, you should also not like barf your grumpiness all over the meeting. So what he was talking about was, okay, so we've got this, conflict avoiding, emotionally unprofessional group that's not dealing with stress very well. And what they're seeking out is a place for that to go. And his assertion was that the place it was going was the other empathic people in the organization.
Right. Yes.
So the ones who are able to sense that energy are really good, shoulder to cry on, good listener.
Right. Yeah, absorb everybody else's stuff.
And those people are getting super burnt out.
Right.
So it's actually not the ones that are kind of overly emoting. It's the ones that are kind of receiving all of that emotion.
At this point, I have to also say that I asked for 20-somethings to watch this video and feedback. And what was very interesting is the comment that one of them made regarding that exact thing, that all the empathic people are the one absorbing everybody else's stuff. That person's response was, well, that is an unhealthy person that hasn't sought any support or help in therapy. And I was like, whoa. So even, but even
like,
at that age.
Totally, I get that, but also that's a tough position.
Yeah, but see right there. So like you even look in this, so this isn't just the 50-somethings in disalignment with 20-somethings. Like there's a whole thing going on even at that same peer group and how they respond to each other. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that we really need to pay attention to. Yeah.
So one of Simon's suggestions on what we can do about it is to hold space for them. Yes. And actually, I was a little confused at what he meant by that. So what do you think he meant by hold space for them?
I think that what he meant, and you know what? I think that's what happened with a lot of people, that they didn't quite get that. What I feel he means when he says that is we need to be patient and we need to be open, and we need to allow the proper amount of interaction and time so that we can all work together to see something change. And it's very much like if you look at like after a world war, all of the country bands together. What's good for one is good for all. I mean, and that's exactly what he's talking about. Even though we may not have anything huge like a war that just happened. Well, we have a war with Ukraine, but it's completely different. I think he's just saying we need to come back together. And regardless of which generation we're in, regardless of our opinion.
Hey, just not to remind you of the obvious, but we did just go through an entire global pandemic.
Yeah, we did.
That was the thing. That was the thing that's not on this Gen Z list yet, but should be very shortly. It would be COVID global pandemic. That totally shapes this generation.
Yeah, right. The pandemic. Hello. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's what he meant. I think he was just saying we need to be able to talk about this. We need to be able to work together. We need to be able to continue, even if it's uncomfortable or makes us upset or we see things in the workplace that bother us. We need to hold space for us to continue to work through this. I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, patience with it will pay off.
Yeah. I just thought it was such a great 2 minute, like I always feel like he's amazing at being able to take this whole huge thing and like parse it down into the simplest of descriptions that are so eloquently stated.
Yeah. Well, I really like working with a whole variety of different generations.
I do too.
I find value in all the different kind of points of view.
Yeah.
And like really like, and frankly, kind of like world views, right? The way people see the world as from young to old. And again, we're kind of talking in stereotypes, but I see boomers that see the world a lot like a millennial sees it.
Yeah.
Based on that. You know what I mean? It's like, so this is not like a one size fits all thing.
No, no, of course not.
But to me, having a variety of world views in an organization makes for a stronger, healthier, and if like more like a more competitive, smarter business.
Right.
So
and you know what? Also, what I would say is one thing that we forget all the time, and it's unfortunate. But the truth of the matter is, what happens to one of us happens to all of us. And we have a false sense of security that if we see somebody else in a bad situation or another group in a bad situation, if we steer clear or if we have a movement in an opposite direction or whatever, that we're creating safety and security for ourselves. The truth of the matter is that's not how it works. It's just not how it works. We have to be in partnership as an entire human culture. We have to. And we can chase around and pretend like that doesn't exist, and we can parse ourselves out into every single core group that you want to, but the same reality is still underneath it all.
Yeah. Well, cool. This is a fun conversation. I like talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I know.
We could probably go on and on. I think we just like scratched the surface of it, but
yeah, exactly. We should probably drop the that podcast link in the description.
We'll put it in the show notes, and I'll put this other article I found in the show notes too, because it talks about the differences in the workplace, which is really good. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, sounds cool.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.